the beasts that ruled the stars. The Galactic Council's central holodeble glowed a deep crimson, the color reserved for extinction events. Holographic icons flickered as a dozen alien representatives whispered in terror. Another colony had gone silent. Another world had fallen. A trembling diplomat from the Volari Confederation rose, his chitinous arms quivering. "They've taken Theron 9, he rasped. The Vor'Kash arrived at dawn cycle. Our defense fleets didn't even engage. They fled before the first broadcast. No one blamed them. The Vor'Kash were not an army. They were a nightmare that walked. Towering 2.5 meters tall, wrapped in black, scale-like armor that shimmered in infrared, they were the galaxy's apex predators, and they knew it. Where others built civilizations, the Vor'Kash honed the art of hunting sentient life. They didn't conquer for territory or wealth. They hunted to remind every species who ruled the stars. On Theron 9, their hunt had begun. The jungle was a labyrinth of mist and rot, choked with thick fungal trees and glowing spores that drifted like ghosts. The cruel, an insectoid species native to the planet, had barricaded themselves inside a network of burrowed hives. For days, they'd listened to the screams of those taken in the night. Now, silence was worse. A shadow moved through the fog. Then another. 6 Vor'Kash hunters, their armor blending seamlessly with the environment, crept between the twisted roots. Their leader, Commander Korveth, raised a taloned hand to halt them. His secondary eyes flicked open, scanning for pheromones. There, fear heavy in the air. He inhaled it like perfume. The scent of terror, he hissed. They know we are near. His second-in-command chuckled, mandibles clattering softly. Do they ever not? Only once, Korveth replied, his voice like metal grinding against bone. A long time ago, on a human world, they burned their own cities before we could claim them. They are defective prey. Humans, the warriors spat the word like acid. Primitive mammals. Fragile. Their fear smells strange. Korveth's crimson eyes gleamed. It is not fear. It is defiance. That is why they amuse me. The jungle rustled ahead. Movement. Korveth raised his plasma caster. A cruel worker stumbled from the brush, thin, shaking, mandibles twitching. It fell to its knees, begging in static clicks. Korveth didn't even slow. The plasma bolt vaporized it in a blink. Move forward, he ordered. We finish this hunt before dawn. The hunters advanced deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, heavier. Their thermal sensors flickered, interference. One of the Vor'Kash paused. Commander, I detect. A click underfoot. Boom. The explosion tore through the clearing. Dirt and metal shards shredded armor and bone. 3 hunters went down, howling in disbelief. Korveth spun, scanning for the source. Smoke, heat, motion, but no visible targets. Who dares, he snarled and stopped. A voice, distorted and cold, echoed from the tree-line. You're not the only predators out here. The Vor'Kash froze. That voice, it wasn't cruel. It wasn't synthetic. It was human. A second explosion hit from the left. Plasma fire rained from the trees, followed by bursts of kinetic rounds that punched through Vor'Kash armor like paper. One of the hunters collapsed, his chest a smoking ruin. Another tried to charge forward, but tripped a second mine, vanishing in a blinding flash. Identify the attackers. Korveth roared. His visor displayed motion blurs, dozens of them, moving with impossible precision. Their heat signatures were faint, shielded, erratic. Not animals. Soldiers. Thermal camouflage. One of his warriors barked. Unknown technology. Not unknown, Korveth whispered as he watched a figure emerge through the smoke. Humanoid, armored in matte black exosuits. Visors glowing faint blue. Rifles slung low, their posture calm, predatory. Human. He remembered them now. The colony on Corvin Reach, decades ago. His kind had hunted them, expecting screams. Instead, they'd found cities turned to ash by human hands, and soldiers who fought until the last drop of oxygen left their suits. Back then, he'd thought them insane. Now he understood. The humans didn't fear extinction. They defied it. Contact confirmed. came a human voice over comms. Female, steady, confident. Target cluster neutralized. Proceeding with cleanup. Through the smoke, Captain Rena Ortiz surveyed the carnage. Her breath condensed in the frozen air as she lowered her rifle. Behind her, 5 armored figures fanned out, covering the perimeter. She keyed her mic. Command, this is Echo 7. Theron, 9 confirmed hot. Predator contact verified. We're not dealing with myths. We're dealing with monsters. Understood, came the reply. And you, Captain? Are you afraid? Ortiz looked at the burning silhouettes of the Vor'Kash in the distance, towering shadows collapsing under their own arrogance. She almost smiled. Fear's a luxury, sir. We're human. In the forest's dying light, Corveth dragged himself from the wreckage. His armor was scorched, half his vision gone. He looked toward the advancing humans, their blue visors glinting like ghosts in the mist. For the first time in his life, the great predator felt his own pulse quicken, not from hunger, but from something he couldn't name. Was this what his prey had always felt? The commander hissed, trembling. Impossible. And from somewhere beyond the smoke, Ortiz's voice cut through again, calm, almost amused. You're hunting the wrong species, alien. The hunters of the galaxy had met something worse than prey. They'd met humans, the species that doesn't fear. The night sky over Theron, 9 glowed, faintly orange from the fires below. Smoke twisted up through the forest canopy like the breath of a dying god. Among the ruins, Captain Rena Ortiz crouched over a hollow map projected from her gauntlet, its pale light flickering against her visor. Echo, 7 to command, she whispered. We've confirmed 6 hostiles down, 2 unaccounted for, likely regrouping east of Sector Delta. Requesting drone recon. Copy that, Echo, 7. Command responded. Thermal interference is heavy. You're on your own until we can recalibrate. Ortiz muted the channel and glanced around her squad. 5 soldiers, humans all, spread in a semicircle, rifles trained on the forest's shadowy depths. Their armor bore scorch marks, scratches, and mud, proof of a fight that had gone far too close for comfort. Corporal Vikram Sato, their sharpshooter, knelt beside her, cleaning his rifle's rail coils. Ma'am, you think they'll come back? He asked, voice muffled by his helmet filter. Ortiz didn't look up. They always do. Private Lena Park, the youngest in the team, exhaled shakily. I saw one up close, she murmured. Its eyes glowed through the smoke. I swear it. It smiled at me. Sato grunted. Yeah, well, I smiled back. With a rail slug. The squad chuckled softly. Laughter, short, nervous but real, cut the tension. Humans had always been good at that, joking at the edge of terror. Ortiz straightened, scanning the tree line. They're not used to prey that fights back, she said. That's our edge. Keep it. High above, the Vor'Kash watched. Commander Corveth, his armor scorched and half his sensor suite ruined, crouched on a broken ridge. Around him, 2 surviving hunters rearmed their plasma casters. Their breathing came fast, irregular. They'd lost their composure. They killed half our squad, one rasped. How? By being what we are not, Corveth answered coldly. Adaptable. He ran a claw over the blackened armor plating on his chest, feeling where human shrapnel had pierced it. They think like predators, but not out of hunger, out of vengeance. The younger hunter hissed. They have no pheromone reaction. My fears signal it didn't touch them. I noticed, Corveth growled. His crimson eyes narrowed as he scanned through recorded combat data. Every tactic, every shot, every movement deliberate, controlled. These weren't beasts reacting to fear. These were soldiers who had learned to use it as fuel. Perhaps, Corveth murmured, the humans are what we might have become had we ever known prey stronger than ourselves. Meanwhile, Ortiz's squad advanced deeper into the forest. The fog thickened, swallowing sound. Only the hum of their exosuits broke the silence. Motion sensors? Ortiz asked. Nothing yet, replied Sato. But the forest's alive. Hard to tell what's moving. Ortiz tapped a control on her wrist. The squad's visors shifted into multi-spectrum mode. Thermal overlays painting the world in shades of red and gold. The forest was a furnace of small creatures in decay, but among them, faint cold spots flickered, moving low and fast. "Contact," Park whispered. Before Ortiz could respond, plasma bolts tore through the trees. The squad dove for cover as blue fire lanced past, burning holes through the ground. "Return fire." The forest lit up in a storm of kinetic energy. Rail slugs sliced through bark and armor alike. One Vor'Kash fell, limbs shattered, shrieking in a guttural roar that echoed like a wounded machine. The second predator charged, slamming into Sergeant Cole Varga with bone-crushing force. The two tumbled into the dirt. The creature's claws tore into his shoulder plate, sparks flying. "Varga!" Ortiz shouted, sprinting forward. She drew her sidearm, a plasma revolver, and fired twice into the Vor'Kash's neck. The creature stumbled back, molten blood spraying, before collapsing in a hiss of steam. Cole coughed through his helmet's respirator. "Guess I'm still pretty, right, Cap?" Ortiz smirked faintly. "You'll live. You always do." The team regrouped, panting, smoke curling from their weapons. Park stared at the massive corpse before them. "How do we even scare something like that?" she whispered. Ortiz crouched beside the body, studying its black, armor-like hide. "We don't," she said. "We remind them what fear feels like." She tapped her helmet, switching to command frequency. "Echo, 7 to all units. Confirmed Vor'Kash neutralization. These things aren't gods, they bleed. And when they bleed, they learn." Hours later, in the ruins of an old cruel hive, the humans set up a temporary command post. The alien structures glistened like amber shells, cracked and hollow. Ortiz sat on a broken pillar, removing her helmet. Steam rose from her sweat-soaked hair as the cold air hit her face. Sato handed her a ration bar. "You think they'll bring reinforcements?" Ortiz took a bite. "If they do, we'll greet them the same way." "You really think we can win?" Park asked. Ortiz looked out at the jungle. The smoldering fires, the faint cries of distant creatures, the smell of ash and ozone. "Win," she said. "No. Winning's for people who think the fight ends. We're here to make them remember us." There was silence. Then Cole laughed softly. "You really are insane, Captain." She smiled thinly. "That's why it works." Across the forest, Corveth watched through a damaged sensor drone. The human squad, small, fragile, audacious, was moving again. They didn't retreat, didn't hide. They advanced. He growled softly, admiration mixed with hatred. "So, this is humanity." He activated his fleet's communicator. "Prepare orbital sweep. No prisoners. I want their world burned." Static answered. The command relay flickered. Then, a human voice cut into his channel. Calm, clear, deliberate. "This frequency is ours now. You're not hunting anymore. You're being hunted." The transmission ended. For the first time in his long, blood-stained life, Commander Corveth realized that he was afraid. Predators hunted. Dawn broke over Theron 9, but the light brought no peace. Smoke still curled from the shattered jungles, and the air stank of ionized metal and blood. The once lush planet had become a battlefield, a war between the galaxy's apex predators and a species that refused to kneel. From orbit, the Terran stealth carrier TDS Relentless drifted silently, its matte black hull absorbing radar and thermal scans. Inside, rows of soldiers prepared for drop deployment. Humanity's counterstrike had begun. Captain Rena Ortiz's face appeared on the carrier's hollow feed, patched through from the surface. Her voice was steady, her armor scorched, eyes fierce. "They're regrouping, sir. Their leader's smart, adapting fast. But we've got something they don't." "Fear," replied Admiral Harper, a grizzled veteran overseeing the mission. Ortiz smirked. "No, sir. Creativity." On the ground, Echo 7 had been hunting for hours. They moved through a maze of burnt trees, following faint tracks where the Vor'Kash's heavy claws had crushed the earth. Drones hummed above them, scanning for heat signatures. Every movement was deliberate, every sound measured. Private Lena Park knelt by a charred corpse, cruel, torn apart by plasma fire. "They slaughtered these people for sport," she muttered. Ortiz nodded grimly. That's what predators do when they think they're untouchable. She placed a beacon beside the bodies, not for burial, but for vengeance. The beacon pulsed red, marking the coordinates for an incoming strike. "Let's make them remember this place," she said. A kilometer away, Commander Korveth crouched atop a ridge of stone, his armor systems slowly recalibrating. He had lost 8 of his finest hunters. The humans had drawn them into traps, ambushes so precise they seemed psychic. "How do prey fight like this?" one of his lieutenants hissed. "Because they are not prey," Korveth growled. "There's something else." He turned his gaze toward the human signal beacons flashing faintly in the distance. The humans weren't retreating. They were hurting him. For the first time in centuries, the Vor'Kash commander realized he had become the hunted. "Drone feed incoming," Sato reported. 3 hostiles approaching from the ridge, heavy armor signatures. Ortiz checked her HUD. The enemy was closing in fast. Perfect. She tapped a command sequence on her gauntlet, activating phase 1 of the trap. To the east, a series of hidden thermal decoys flickered online, holographic projections of human soldiers, their heat profiles indistinguishable from reality. The Vor'Kash bit immediately. They charged into the decoys with plasma, fire, and guttural roars, tearing apart nothing but holographic ghosts. Then came phase 2. From the canopy above, high-tension monofilament wires snapped loose. The invisible threads sliced through armor and limbs like razors. 2 Vor'Kash dropped instantly, their blood vaporizing on contact. The third staggered back, screaming in disbelief. Sato's rifle cracked once. A rail slug straight through the creature's skull. 3 down, he said flatly. "Still think we're prey?" Ortiz's voice came cold and sharp. "Keep the pressure. We don't stop until none of them walk out." Far above the battlefield, the Relentless launched a new wave of stealth pods. Each one carried a human fire team. 2 soldiers, 1 drone, and enough ordnance to flatten a small city block. They fell through the atmosphere like silent meteors, invisible to sensors. 1 pod slammed into the jungle near Echo 7's position, deploying reinforcements and supplies. A corporal stepped out, visor flashing with combat data. "Captain, command says your plan's approved. Phase 3 is a go." Ortiz nodded. "Good. Let's end the hunt." By mid-morning, the forest had transformed into a death maze. Every path the Vor'Kash took led to traps, sonic disruptors that scrambled their senses, incendiary mines that ignited the very air, and drones broadcasting fear frequencies designed to mimic their own pheromones back at them. The predators began turning on each other, slashing at phantom enemies they thought were nearby. Korveth roared through his comms, trying to regain control. "Stop! Focus! It's deception!" But it was too late. One of his warriors stumbled into an open clearing, the remains of an old, cruel village, now ringed with charges. A faint human voice came through a loudspeaker. "Welcome to the food chain." The charges detonated in a wave of blinding fire. Korveth threw himself flat as the shockwave tore through the trees. When the smoke cleared, he saw his army, what was left of it, scattered and burning. And then he heard it, boots crunching on ash. Humans. Ortiz and her squad emerged from the smoke, weapons raised. Her voice carried across the clearing. "Commander Korveth, isn't it? You came here to hunt. Congratulations, you found us." He bared his fangs, raising his plasma blade. "You are nothing," he snarled. "Flesh. Noise. You cannot." A single shot from Sato hit his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. "Talk later," Ortiz said. "Now you listen." She walked closer, her visor reflecting his trembling form. "You've made entire species extinct for sport. You think fear makes you strong. But fear doesn't make us weak, Commander. It makes us dangerous." Korveth tried to rise, rage trembling through his frame. But his weapons were gone, systems failing. Around him, human soldiers encircled his position, drones hovering above with humming plasma blades. Ortiz raised her rifle, but didn't fire. "Tell your people," she said, voice low and calm. "We're done running. The age of prey is over. Behind her, Park planted the final beacon, a flare of blue light that streaked into the sky. Seconds later, the orbital strike came, a single kinetic rod from the Relentless, descending like the wrath of a god. Corveth looked up just in time to see the heavens split open. From orbit, the blast bloomed like a second sunrise. The forest vaporized, shockwaves flattening everything for miles. Inside the Relentless, Admiral Harper stood silently, watching the display. A communications officer whispered, "Sir, the Vor'Kash fleet is retreating." Harper nodded slowly. "They came here to teach fear," he said. "Looks like they learned it instead." On the surface, Ortiz and her squad stood at the crater's edge, their armor blackened with ash. Park whispered, "Was that too much?" Ortiz looked at the empty sky. "No such thing when you're teaching monsters how to bleed." The humans turned toward the dawn, survivors of a battle no one else in the galaxy had dared to fight. For the first time, the predators were running, and the galaxy was watching. The new apex. The smoldering remains of Theron, 9 stretched for miles, a wasteland of ash and twisted metal. Where the Vor'Kash had once stalked like gods, there was now silence. Only the wind moved, whispering through the charred ruins of the jungle. Captain Rena Ortiz stood on the edge of the massive crater carved by the orbital strike. Her armor was cracked, the paint scorched black. She stared into the abyss, where once the galaxy's most feared predators had stood, and where humanity had buried them. Private Lena Park approached, helmet tucked under her arm. "Thermal scans are clean, ma'am," she said quietly. "No movement. No survivors." Ortiz nodded. "Then it's done." But even as she said the words, a part of her didn't believe it. Humanity's fights were never really done. They just changed shape. Far above, aboard the TDS Relentless, Admiral Harper stood before a live hollow conference of the Galactic Council. The alien representatives filled the chamber, scaled, feathered, luminous, each one silent as the human feed came online. The Admiral's voice was cold, deliberate. Operation Apex concluded. The Vor'Kash hunting fleet is destroyed. Theron, 9 secured. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then a voice, thin and trembling, broke the silence. You fought them?" asked the Valari delegate, his antennae quivering. "You didn't flee?" Harper's lips tightened. "Humans don't flee. We fight." A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Zurith ambassador, a creature of mist and light, flickered with agitation. "You don't understand," it hissed. "The Vor'Kash ruled the dark between stars for millennia. No species survives them. They project fear. It's biological." "Then they should have stayed in the dark," Harper said. "Because we don't scare easy." He ended the transmission. The council chamber fell into chaos. Every species in the room whispered the same name, human. A word that, until now, meant nothing more than a young, reckless civilization from a backwater arm of the galaxy. Now it meant something else entirely. Back on the surface, Ortiz and her squad began recovery operations. Drones buzzed overhead, mapping the devastation. The cruel, what few remained of them, emerged from their burrows, small, cautious, watching the humans with a mix of awe and terror. One of the insectoid survivors approached Ortiz, its mandibles clicking in halting galactic standard. "You kill the night hunters?" it asked. Ortiz nodded once. "They won't be back." The cruel bowed its head low, a gesture of reverence. "No one ever stopped them before," it said. "You not afraid?" Ortiz smiled faintly, shaking her head. "We were afraid," she said. "We just didn't let it stop us." In the wreckage of a Vor'Kash shuttle, they found something unexpected, a survivor. Commander Corveth, the predator who once commanded the hunt, lay trapped under twisted hull plating. His armor was shattered, one arm severed, but his crimson eyes still burned with hatred. Ortiz approached cautiously, rifle aimed. "Still alive," Sato muttered. "Tough bastard." Corveth looked up, snarling. "Kill me," he rasped. "End it." Ortiz crouched beside him, lowering her weapon. "You spent centuries killing for pleasure," she said. "You want to teach fear? Consider the lesson taught." His mandibles twitched. "You are not prey." "No," Ortiz said quietly. "We never were." He stared at her for a long moment, the predator studying his replacement. His voice dropped to a whisper. You have become what we were. Ortiz rose to her feet. No, she said. We became something better. She turned away, leaving him to the silence of his dying world. Hours later, aboard the Relentless, the humans gathered in the ship's observation deck. Through the viewport, Theron, 9 hung below them, blackened and scarred but free. Admiral Harper entered the room, his uniform as worn as their armor. You did it, he told Ortiz simply. You showed the galaxy what happens when someone pushes humanity too far. Ortiz gave a tired grin. They'll remember it, sir. They already do, Harper said, handing her a datapad. You should see the council reports. They're calling you the apex of fear. The squad laughed quietly. Park leaned against the glass. Kinda ironic, huh? We beat the galaxy's apex predators, and they call us that. Sato smirked. Guess the universe needed a new monster. Ortiz shook her head. Not a monster. A reminder. Fear's not something to worship. It's something to master. Weeks later, across the galaxy, the legend spread. Vor'Kash colonies went silent. Their hunting fleets retreated from border worlds. For the first time in recorded history, their war banners were lowered. In cantinas and council halls, in the depths of space stations, and on the fringes of colonized worlds, the story was retold in whispers. The predators met a species that didn't run. The Terrans, they fought back. The humans made the Vor'Kash afraid. And so the myth grew. Children on distant worlds would point at the stars and whisper of the apex. Soldiers spoke the name human as both warning and prayer. Ortiz stood once more before the viewport, watching the stars drift by. Cole Varga joined her, arms crossed. You ever wonder what comes next? He asked. She smiled faintly. Next, someone else will come. Something worse, maybe. He chuckled. You sound like you're looking forward to it. Her gaze hardened. If it comes for us, it'll learn what the last one did. He nodded, understanding. That fear doesn't belong to the predators anymore. Ortiz turned to him, her eyes reflecting the light of distant suns. Exactly. It belongs to us now, and we decide who earns it. Epilogue. The Council Record, year 2437. Where the galaxy once trembled before the Vor'Kash, one race stood unyielding. They faced the darkness without flinching, and in doing so, redefined the very meaning of fear. Henceforth, let be known, humanity is not prey. Humanity is the apex